Recent episodes of Star Trek Lower Decks have really been appealing to my sensibilities and personal bias. I mean, last week we had a handful of really fine Betazoid milfies on the ship, and this week we're going to the home planet of arguably my favorite Star Trek alien species of all time, the Ferengi. The Ferengi are super exciting. We have seen them all the way from the next gen to the end of Deep Space Nine and onwards. They are such an entertaining, hilarious species. They're probably the most explored aliens besides the Klingons, and sometimes when I'm watching Deep Space Nine, I felt like the Ferengi got a little bit more love than any other Star Trek species I could think of, besides maybe Vulcans. A critical moment in Star Trek lore as they're taking it upon themselves to introduce the moment in which Ferenginar is actually trying to join the Federation, and this is a huge step. The fact that they're even applying for this process is just a huge deal, considering that the Ferengi are one of the most conservative races out there, and they've always been kind of disgusted by the Federation and how nice they are, and how they are just infested with humans. The fact that Max Grodenchik and Chase Masterson are also reprising their roles as Rom and LEETA in this episode just makes it all the more fun and authentic. It is tantamount to that other Deep Space Nine episode they did when Nana Visitor actually reprised her role as Major Kira, and it's just really fun that they're taking the opportunity to do this on Lower Decks, because they could actually bring these characters back, and even though their actors are quite old and seasoned by now, we could just bring them back and make them little fun young cartoon characters and make everything canonical and comfortable. That I'm just going to give them an A+ to an S on how well they brought Ferenginar to life in this episode. It was raining all of the time. It was just a constant array of bars, gambling places, businesses, adverts. It was really funny, and I feel like they did a way better job of showing us Ferenginar than they did Orion. First off, it's just always raining there. Ferenginar is basically Seattle, or I guess if we're trying to be a little bit more accurate here, it's pretty much the UK, because all of its inhabitants are also snaggletooth mutants. Captain Freeman in this admiral who, correct me if I'm wrong, I went back into the episode a couple times and I could not get the name of this dude. Did they really just not give us a name for this bald admiral? They took the time to give us the name of his starship, the USS Toronto, but I never got his name. They're trying to introduce Ferenginar into the Federation, and they're trying to get Rom and LEETA to sign these simple papers, but then Rom and LEETA go on this really funny shtick where they act very naive and then get them to make a whole bunch of concessions. Another thing that's really cool about Rom, he just acts really playful and dumb, really likes baseball, and that of course is a reference to the fact that he played baseball with the rest of the Deep Space Nine cast in Take Me Out to the Holodeck. That unnamed admiral also referenced the Moab 4 colony from the TNG episode, The Masterpiece Society, and also in the beginning of the episode aboard the Ferengi vessel before they're shot down by the reoccurring mystery ship, we get to see a Genesis device, a mini one, aboard their space vessel, which was a little bit of a red flag for me. Very dangerous technology that can be utilized and turned into a weapon by primitive societies. The fact that we just have one chilling on a random Ferengi spacecraft is kind of negligent and very dangerous in my opinion. That spaceship that's going around and destroying all these ships at the beginning of the episode, that they're not actually destroying all of these aliens, but they're just destroying their ships and transporting them aboard the ship for nefarious uses. Star Trek Lower Decks isn't afraid to kill people and be adult and dark, but I don't think it would be willing to kill people en masse like this. Something that was a big deal to me is the fact that now that Rom and LEETA are the progressive leaders of Ferenginar, Ferengi women are finally allowed to clothe themselves. And I was a little bit suspicious of this because I'm thinking it can't be even more than 2 decades since the end of Deep Space Nine, and the Ferengi are the most conservative culture I could think of. Were they really so quick to transition into a fully clothed race? Middle of the episode, they kind of answered this question for me, because some of the Ferengi females still choose to go around naked. At the library bar scene when Mariner was hanging out with Quimp, there was a naked Ferengi female at the bar, and I thought that was just such a nice touch and addition. The amount of times that they referenced Sluggo-Cola in this episode also made me happy. They had an advert on the TV screen that Boimler was watching. Sluggo-Cola, of course, being the drink that was in the episode Profit and Lace, where Quark dressed up as a female Ferengi to try to get Zek some support in being the Grand Nagus again. Speaking of Quimp, Mariner meets up with Quimp in this episode, and I thought that we were going to see him just when I saw this episode title many months ago, because Quimp is that one Ferengi that showed up in actually episode 2 of season 1, titled Envoys. Mariner used him to be that stereotypical Ferengi that was used to trick Boimler so that he could appear more confident towards the end of the episode. Put Rutherford and Tendi, like, together again. They do this every couple of episodes where they kind of spark that little romance that they're hinting at, and they put them inside this Ferengi love suite. And can anybody tell me what those things were on the bed? They looked like towels that were folded into slugs, and I think that that's just kind of supposed to be a joke about how Ferengi like bugs and slimy things. While drinking her woes away with Quimp at the bar, Mariner orders a Dagger of the Mind shot, which you really have to question how lost in the sauce that drink is going to make you. I feel like that is going to make you more lost than if you were Simon Van Gelder sitting in the chair for more than 10 minutes. While Boimler is watching the Ferengi TV, by the way, on screen, there was a reference to the enemy within because they had the iconic dog with horn on screen, the very funny prop that they used. Very cheaply, just a regular dog that was dressed up with a little horn on top. Quark's Federation Experience Bar is just absolutely ridiculous, by the way. I love how they're giving Quark post Deep Space Nine a whole bunch of random, really funny businesses that are just sprinkled everywhere. In the bar, we had multiple famous starships. We had the Guardian of Forever. We had the Feral Cavemen from the Galileo 7 episode. The host was literally cosplaying as Spock. There was the Vulcan Ritual Grounds from Amok Time. And then there was also a Mugato. A really good joke that perfectly accentuates Ferengi humor, by the way, is the fact that they had a post-Dominion War memorial all dedicated to the prophets that they lost or could have had during the Dominion War if all that shit didn't go on. So that was really funny and very indicative of Ferengi culture. And that last scene when Boimler is talking to Ransom, and Ransom's like, I'm just gonna have the Ferengi authorities come and drag you to the starship, okay? Just let it happen. And this big, giant, buff Ferengi comes in with an electro whip that is a great reference to the original TNG depiction of the Ferengi. The crew of the TNG Enterprise is forced to go down and kind of have a little skirmish and duel with the Ferengi. The Ferengi warriors of the Marauder class are way different and depicted strangely compared to the rest of Ferengi society that we see later. In that episode, they're very strong. Like, they're super strong to the point where they can fight Klingons, and they have these absurd electro whip weapons. And I think the fact that he was so buff barging into the room to manhandle Boimler is a reference to how strong the electro whip Ferengi actually were. Lastly, I'll just say that I am very impressed with how Ferenginar looked. It looked very good. All of the little designs, the furniture, all of the stations where you can input money to either just kind of use an elevator or look through binoculars or use simple things. Everything around Ferenginar was monetized, and I loved it. I feel like they did a way better job with Ferenginar than Orion. I know I already said that, but it really couldn't be more true for me. All in all, I'm happy I got to see Rom and LEETA. It was a very entertaining and, dare I say, adorable episode of Star Trek. I really liked Mariner and Quimp's interaction as well. I had no gripes with it. I feel like at the end of the day, I want to give it a 9, but I'm going to give it an 8 to an 8.5, because as much as it is appealing to my sensibilities, there is argument to be had here that they could always do a little bit more fan service and a little bit more of a wow factor for such a strong episode with a great premise. But other than that, that's really how I feel about it. Let's give it an 8 to an 8.5. This guy loves cats? No, just cross that out, replace it with Ferengi, because I really do love them so much. They're such an awesome species. Thank you so much for tuning in to another one of my Star Trek reviews. If you are enjoying any of the content that you see on the channel, I'd be very flattered if you were to subscribe once we reach 10K subscribers. I am going to dress up as a Star Trek alien, film a really funny video on public. Please leave a comment down below. They're my favorite thing about the platform. The more you leave, the happier I am. If you enjoyed the video, please slap a like on it. With all that being said, y'all have a good rest of your week. Live long and prosper.